In 1997, a Boeing 747 aircraft from the Saudi Arabian Airlines wanted to land at the Chennai airport, but by mistake it missed the entire Chennai airport and it landed at a nearby Air Force Air Base. So today in this video I will let you all know how this astonishing incident occurred. So hello guys, I am Akshay Kumar and this is your channel Science Plus. So let's start our video. So it was the year 1997 when a Boeing 747 aircraft of Saudi Arabia Airlines was carrying 330 passengers and 17 crew members. This aircraft was approaching Chennai and everything was just normal and everything was just perfect for approach. So, for landing the aircraft, the pilots requested ATC for visual approach. Now, in short, visual approach is something in which the pilots do not use any instrument to approach the runway and land. In visual approach, the pilots basically look through the cockpit windows and they physically see the runway on which they have to land the aircraft. But there is a drawback regarding this, that for correct approach and correct landing, you will have to see the correct runway. Now let's come back to our topic. So on that particular day, the radar at Chennai airport was not working. So the ATC at Chennai airport cannot see where the aircraft is going and for which runway it was making approach. So when the pilots were cleared for visual approach, instead of seeing Chennai runway, they saw Tambaram runway, and Tambaram is an Air Force airbase. Now Tambaram airport is nearby the Chennai airport and both the runways are too identical in the sense they both face in the same direction. So the pilots approached the Tambaram runway and they thought it was Chennai. Now another critical thing in this case was that Tambaram runway is very short. It is only 4500 feet and Boeing 747 is a huge aircraft and it requires about 8000 to 9000 feet to land and take off as well. Now there are two questions. First is how this aircraft managed to land at the Tambaram runway, which is very shorter, and if it landed successfully, then how did it manage to take off again and go back to Chennai? It was just a recipe for disaster. So the story goes something like this. Now the Chennai ATC thought that the aircraft is approaching the Chennai runway, which is runway 07, and it is about 10,000 feet runway. But the aircraft approached Tambaram runway 05, which is only 4500 feet long. Now the radar of Tambaram airbase was working, and ATC noticed that a huge aircraft is making approach at his runway. Then the Tambaram ATC informed Chennai ATC that your craft is approaching Tambaram Airbase runway. Chennai ATC then tried to contact the aircraft but was unable to contact the pilots. Then ATC told the ground staffs of Tambaram to fire red colored flares in air. This indicates a landing aircraft that landing permission is not granted. But the pilots either did not notice the flares or they just ignored them. And they continued to approach and at last they landed at the Tambaram airport. When pilots landed the aircraft, they realized that it was a huge mistake by them. They jammed the brake and somehow managed to stop the aircraft just before 100 meters to finish the runway. All the four tires were blown up. So this aircraft was landed at an Air Force airbase without any permission, without any landing clearance and without any emergency. It was a very big deal. The passengers were kept on board for 5 hours. After 5 hours, the passengers were evacuated from Tambaram airport. After that, Air Force, DGCA, Civil Aviation Ministry, everyone was informed. Emergency meetings were called. Now another big deal was how to get aircraft out of that small runway. It was stuck at Tambaram for 4 days. At last, the aircraft was completely stripped off. Completely, it means everything unnecessary. Seats, even the air conditioning was removed. All of these actions were taken to make the aircraft as lighter as possible to take off the aircraft from that small runway. And at last the aircraft takes off successfully and landed in Chennai airport. So this was the whole scenario and whole story of that astonishing incident that occurred at Tambaram and Chennai airport.